Hello, Hornet Nation. My name is Allison Garrett, and I am honored to serve as the president of Emporia State University. Welcome to the Alumni in the Spotlight interview series as we celebrate this year's distinguished alumni and outstanding recent graduates. Today, we're so proud to recognize Steve Cohen as one of our 2020 distinguished alumni, the highest honor granted by Emporia State University and our Alumni Association to a degree-bearing alumnus or alumna. Since the program started in 1960, we have honored more than 200 alumni and are so proud of all of their accomplishments. Steve, congratulations. We're proud of you. We're proud of the work that you've done throughout your career. Thank you for representing Emporia State University so well. And to our audience, enjoy this interview with one of Emporia State's finest graduates.
Thank you, President Garrett, and welcome everyone to the Alumni in the Spotlight series. My name is David Cordell, and I serve as Provost and Vice President for Academic Affairs here at ESU. Today, we celebrate our 2020 Distinguished Alumnus, Steve Cohen. Steve is the retired President and Chief Executive Officer of the Kansas Health Foundation. He comes from St. John, Kansas, and earned his Bachelor of Science in Business degree with a major in Business Administration from ESU in 1976. After completing his law degree, Steve worked with Senator Bob Dole in Washington, D.C., and was the state director of Dole's 4 offices here in Kansas. In 1987, he started working at the Kansas Health Foundation in Wichita. And in 2008, he was selected to serve as the foundation's president and CEO. Through his leadership and vision at the Kansas Health Foundation, he has helped both urban and rural communities maintain and improve access to quality health care and education. To date, the Kansas Health Foundation has awarded grants of more than $500 million to foster a higher quality of life in Kansas. Steve was also named a Wichita Business Journal newsmaker and to Ingram's 50 Kansans You Should Know. At ESU, Steve has served as a foundation trustee, an alumni ambassador, and as a speaker for ESU leadership and health classes. I'll leave you with this statement from the letter nominating him for this award. Steve Cohen has been and continues to be a champion for all Kansans. Today's program features an interview of Mr. Cohen conducted by Ed O'Malley, the founding president and CEO of the Kansas Leadership Center. I think you'll enjoy the conversation between Steve and Ed, but we also want you to add your own questions. You can do this by visiting emporia.edu/live. That's emporia.edu/live, and submitting your questions using the Q&A form found at that site. At the conclusion of the interview, if you previously received a Zoom link, don't forget to join us for our after-party Zoom discussion, where you'll have an opportunity for some one-on-one interaction with our honoree. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud to introduce Emporia State University 2020 Distinguished Alumnus Steve Cohen and interviewer Ed O'Malley.
Well, welcome everyone, and thank you, Dr. Cordell, for that great opening for tonight. We're going to have a great interview this evening. Again, my name is Ed O'Malley. So excited to be with my good friend, Steve Cohen, and have the opportunity to interview Steve for tonight's event. We're going to have a great interview. Before I get to questions for Steve, I just want to tell you why I'm so excited about this interview. Number one, Steve has meant so much to me personally. He's a friend, he's a mentor, and I owe so much of my professional career and experience to Steve's mentorship and guidance. But the second reason I'm so excited for this conversation is that Steve has so much wisdom to share, and he wants to share it because he deeply cares about the common good, and he cares about people like you, especially students, learning from experience and achieving great things. So we're going to have a great conversation. The way tonight will work is Steve and I will have a bit of a conversation. I have a number of questions ready for Steve. We'd like you to be putting your questions in as well. And there was a link, I believe, for you to know where to put those questions on the Google Sheets. We'd love your questions to come in for Steve Cohen tonight. And we'll answer those questions, and then eventually we'll have the after party as well. So thanks everybody for being here. And let's dive in. Steve, it's great to be with you, and congratulations on this incredible honor. Real quick, what's that feel like to be honored by your alma mater like this?
Well, it's a little humbling to say the least, Ed, and I'm really thrilled to be here tonight and to be interviewed by you, a good friend of mine. So it's a really big pleasure and honor. I feel very honored by Emporia State that they would do this.
Well, it is an honor, and I know you're a humble guy, but you have a lot of wisdom to share and a lot of great experience. So I'd love to get into that and let folks hear some of that. And the first question I wanted to ask you is about this term, the common good. You and I have known each other now for over 14 years, and I've heard you use that term, the common good, quite a bit. And I'm just curious, like, what does that exactly mean to you? When you talk about the common good, what does that mean? How do you describe what you're talking about there?
Well, Ed, when I think about it, I guess I think that we're working together to improve the good of everyone. If it's good for all of us, then it's good for me as a person as well. How do we work all together to improve the lot of everyone? And it's something that's very important to me in the work that I've done pretty much all my life, really. I worked for Senator Bob Dole for 8 years, and in that role, you're working to improve the common good for the people of Kansas.
Yeah.
And then also my 31 years of work at the Kansas Health Foundation, I felt like I was pretty much doing the same thing all those years too. And really, even as a young child growing up in a very tiny town in the center of Kansas, I remember even as a kid being involved in all kinds of activities in my hometown, working to improve that community as well. So it's always been something very dear to me.
One of the things I was curious about was, where did that spirit, that focus on the common good, that care for the common good come from? And of course, I know about your time with the Kansas Health Foundation, and prior to that with Senator Bob Dole, and prior to that, growing up in St. John, Kansas. Was it baked in your family? Was it just something you saw in St. John? Is it something that you began to think about at Emporia State? Was it when you entered, the public service life and working for a United States Senator? I mean, can you pinpoint, or was it just kind of always there, do you think?
I really think it was always kind of there, but one thing, I've thought a lot about that. And one thing I do think that probably influenced me in some ways that I really hadn't thought about until the last few years is my dad owned an appliance store in my hometown. And one thing I remember, my dad always had a real compassion for people who didn't have resources. And I could always remember he would have, women particularly who would come to the store that wouldn't have much money, and they'd need a washer or dryer or whatever. And my dad, I can just remember him working hours and hours repairing an old washer and dryer or whatever in our front yard or wherever, our driveway, washing and scrubbing it and putting new parts in it. And then he'd sell it to that woman for nearly nothing. And then on credit, many times he'd never get his money out of it, but he just felt so much compassion for people who didn't have resources and really needed something. And when you're a young child, that really has a big impact on you to see that being played out. Yeah. And then also, I think growing up in a little town, you're involved in everything. In school, to make all those activities come off, you have to be a part in everything. I remember my wife, Monica, she grew up in Wichita, and she said she always remembered when the young kids, the girls would apply for her sorority, they would have a list a mile long of every activity that they're involved in the school compared to, girls from bigger schools. And I said, yeah, that's just the way it was. When you grow up in a small town, if you want to do anything, you've got to make it happen. So I think that all was part of growing up in a little town.
Steve, just a quick follow-up question about that story about your dad. I'm curious, did he talk about what he was doing and why he was doing it, or did you just kind of absorb and notice what he was doing? I'm just curious, I'm always curious in how do we learn the lessons that matter most to us? By somebody telling them to us or by watching their actions? How did it play out?
Combination of both. I mean, he would tell about whoever the person was and how they, maybe had, a lot of children and just didn't have any money. But, seeing him out there working, cleaning that washer and dryer up and spending hours and hours and hours on it and hardly charging anything, you knew, that he really cared. So the action probably said more than the words, really. Yeah,
that makes sense. So we want to get the lay of the land of your life just a little bit. So you just talked a little bit about growing up in St. John's. Paint a picture of your time at Emporia State for us. Talk about what it was like for you, how you found yourself there as a Hornet, what your time was like when you were on campus. Just kind of help us get a flavor of what your college experience was like.
Well, Emporia State was a perfect choice for me. I mean, it was kind of a fluke, to be honest, that I ended up there. I had a good friend who went there. I didn't want to go to Fort Hays because everybody from my hometown went to Fort Hays. K-State just seemed too huge for me. Coming from a little town that I had gone to school with all of my classmates pretty much my entire life. I just wanted to go to, a smaller school, but not too small. And Emporia State just seemed like a good choice. And, it worked out wonderfully for me. It really was a great experience. I look back on it with real fondness. I got involved from the very beginning. My freshman year, I was on the debate team. I had debated in high school. And so I got involved with the debate team, had a work study, to help me get through school because my family didn't have a lot of money. And so that really helped a lot. And so I did that my freshman year. I ended up being the freshman class representative on the student government my freshman year. And so that was a good experience as well, getting to know a lot of people through that. And then my sophomore year, I decided I really needed to work to help support my way through school. And so I ended up working for a men's clothing store there called The Guy's Shop, which some of the people on the call might remember that store. It was a men's clothing store at the mall. And I ended up working there almost full time, probably 30 to 40 hours a week throughout the rest of my college career, and became the manager of the store. And that was a great experience. I learned a lot from that. And then also was involved with Blue Key during my last 2 years. And that was a wonderful experience for me.
So you had a few things going on. I mean, you were working almost a full-time job through most of your college experience, involved with Blue Key, involved with student body government some. You had a lot to juggle. When you look back, I assume fond memories. When you look back on your college experience, is that safe to say? Fond memories?
Extremely fond memories. It was a great time in my life.
Yeah,
really, it was wonderful.
So after college, you went off to law school at Washburn, and then you practiced law in St. John's. And I'd love to just hear you share a bit about the decision you made to go work for Senator Dole and why you made that decision, because I think it does connect to your love of the common good. And so just maybe talk about that decision, that moment, that experience, and then I want to ask you some more questions about what you learned through working for the senator. But what was that decision like for you?
Well, I actually got introduced to working with Senator Dole during law school. I applied for a summer internship in Washington, D.C., which I'd heard about while I was in law school, my freshman year of law school during the summer. And I got accepted. And I have to tell you a funny story about that one. I thought I got accepted on my own because I had been involved with Teenage Republicans when I was in high school, actually, very involved. And so I thought, you know, with all that experience, that would look so great on my resume to apply for the, you know, for the internship with Senator Dole. And so I applied for it and ended up getting accepted. And, you know, just thought, well, that's why I got accepted into it. So anyway, so I go off and do the internship, and I really loved it. It was really fun to be in DC for a summer, for 8 weeks, I think it was. And so I came back and finished law school, and then graduated, then went back, as you mentioned, to my hometown and practiced law, and for a couple of years. And during that whole time, I remained involved volunteering for Senator Dole on the campaign. And when he would come back to the state, sometimes they'd call me to travel with him around the state, those kind of things. And so anyway, one day, back to my original story about applying for the internship. So one day I was talking to Senator Dole, and he said, you know, my Aunt Ethel, who lived in St. John, by the way, wrote me a letter when you applied for that internship in Washington, D.C. And she has never once asked me for anything the entire time that I have served in Congress or the Senate in Washington, D.C. But she asked if I would consider you for that internship. And so all this time, I thought I had been accepted for the internship on my own merits. It had been because my mom had mentioned to his Aunt Ethel when she came into the bank one day that I had applied for the internship. My mom had never told me that she had done that. So anyway, I guess the lesson learned is never be afraid to use any contacts that you might have to your advantage.
Yes. Exactly. I love that. Well, and you still had to take the initiative, right? So you still had to take the initiative to apply for that. But I love what you're saying about, you know, don't be afraid to use any contacts you have. And I know you so well that I know how much you care about you know, young folks who are trying to figure out how to be successful, how are trying to find their way through college, who might not have the contacts and things like that somebody like you happen to have based on a relationship like your mom had with somebody, a senator's aunt. And so I just want you to know how much I appreciate how you recognize you are the beneficiary of some wonderful contacts and how you've tried to help be that contact for others. I've seen you do that, and I know that's important to you.
Yeah, and, you know, I've thought about that too with my own kids, and, you know, how we try to help them with people we know to get their foot in the door. And maybe some kids don't have those advantages, but they can create those advantages in their lives too by getting involved in community activities and, you know, getting involved in any other, their church life, or there's ways to get to know people that can help you get ahead. And don't be afraid to use those connections in ways that can benefit you later in life, because it does make a difference. People can put in a good word for you or tell you about an opportunity that you may not be aware of. It really can help you get ahead.
You know, and you still have to often take the initiative, right? And you did that several times. You took the initiative to apply for the internship. You later in your story, you took the initiative to move to Washington, D.C. to work for the senator there for a while, which was a different experience. So there's a piece about taking the initiative, and I like what you're saying about contacts. And for all the students watching, I just think at least one of you should, you know, send Mr. Steve Cohen a letter and just ask him if he'll be a contact for you in the future. My guess is he'll say yes. That's my guess. See, real quick, I want to remind people that you can submit a question for Steve if you go to emporia.edu/live, emporia.edu/live. You can submit a question. We've got a few questions coming in already, which is awesome. I'm going to turn to one of those here in just a minute. But Steve, I want to ask you just a big question now. I mean, you've had a lot of professional experiences. You've seen a lot of things. You've done a lot of things, and you also kind of gave birth to the idea of a leadership center. You helped kind of fashion the idea of the Kansas Leadership Center while you were at the Kansas Health Foundation, and you were a champion for that idea over the years. My question for you is, talk about your own leadership philosophy. What is your leadership philosophy, do you think?
Well, I guess, I believe the reason we created the Leadership Center, Ed, as you know, was because we had a real belief in fostering the common good, building more collaborative leaders in the state of Kansas that cared about making the state a better place. So there were a lot of leadership centers that existed around the country that existed to build leaders that were concerned about their own personal agendas and getting ahead for their own personal benefit or for the benefit of their own organization or whatever. But we were more concerned, and nothing's wrong with that, but we were trying to create that could help people think kind of in a broader way about how do we benefit the entire state of Kansas and the common good. And so when I think about that, I think it's kind of more reflected in that collaborative leadership style of bringing people together and thinking about how do we work all together to make our organization or our state a better place for all people. So it kind of reflects, I guess, my leadership style is more that way of trying to bring people together and facilitating group purpose for the accomplishment of good in an organization.
Where'd that come from, do you think? How did that leadership style form in you? Was it through studying all the different approaches to leadership and deciding that's the one you like, or was it through watching others, trial and error? I'm thinking especially about the students who might be trying to come to grips with what their leadership style is or should be. So how did you craft that leadership style, do you think?
I think it's just over time. I certainly believe that that authoritative leadership style does not work because you always see people kind of chipping away at the authoritative leader in the background. They may go along, but they really don't believe in what's happening at the top, and so the good, it never really seems to work in the end for the good of the organization or the good of the people. So I just think that this other approach works better for everyone and the organization. So I think it's more just seeing what's happened over time or observing people and what's happened over time. It's kind of led me in this direction.
I want to hop to one of the questions that's come in so far. Again, you can leave questions for Steve. If you go to emporia.edu/live, you can add a question for Mr. Steve Cohen. And I want to start with a question from a friend, Steve, a friend of yours, Lynette Murphy, class of 1989. She says hello and congratulations. And her question for you is, how did your experience as CEO of Kansas' largest philanthropic organization prepare you to be a member of the ESU Foundation's Board of Trustees?
Well, I haven't been a member very long, but the Board of Trustees. But I do think it's helped, even for my short tenure, just, just that whole experience in the philanthropic world has made me see, first of all, how most organizations raise money, and also my wife's experience too, as you know, Lynette, because she comes from that world as well. So I've got a lot of knowledge from Monica too, through the years, seeing what she's done. But also, just that whole world, how it operates. Because, I told Ed when I sent him some notes about my history, it's certainly not like I ever planned on being CEO of a health philanthropy when I graduated from Emporia State. I didn't even know what a health philanthropy was when I graduated from Emporia State. So, I've learned a lot over my 31 years, how they operate and what they do and what philanthropy even is. So,
and Steve, on that front, you mentioned that when you were a student, you didn't even know what a health philanthropy was. My guess is there are students watching this right now who might not really know what we mean when we say a health philanthropy. So maybe just give a quick kind of explanation of what is the Kansas Health Foundation, the organization that you were a part of for so many years, and that you served as president and CEO of. How would you describe what it is and what it does?
Well, Kansas Health Foundation was created when a hospital here in Wichita was sold back in 1985. It was a nonprofit hospital, and it was sold to a for-profit corporation, Wesley Medical Center. And so when it was sold for $250 million, the money was put into this nonprofit health foundation, basically. It had to be by law. It couldn't just go to, anyone. And so it was put into this organization, and then this money is invested. And from those investments, we pay out grants across the state of Kansas to improve the health of Kansans. So the money has grown over the years to now about $500 million. And so, we make substantial grants across the state of Kansas, about $20 million a year, 25 million, somewhere in that range, every year are paid out for various health-related charitable causes across the state of Kansas.
Yeah, it's a really interesting kind of line of work to be in. You got to think really long term. You got to think about, like, what are things we could do to make a difference in the lives of Kansans that you didn't have to worry about. It's not like you were an elected official who worked on health issues, who had to get reelected every few years, or it's not like you were in a private company that had to make stockholders happy, or things like that. So I'm just curious, what did you learn from philanthropy, do you think, that could be useful for students and others watching this today to think about in terms of, what did you learn about Kansas, or what did you learn about how to solve hard problems, in community life?
It was a very unique position to be in. I came there soon after it was started back in 1987. The foundation was created in 1985. I became CEO in 2008. So I was CEO a little bit over 10 years. So I pretty much saw it grow through all its various phases. Originally, we were just basically responding to people's requests for funds. And after a while, we made the decision, the board and the staff together, that we really weren't making much of a difference in Kansas doing that with the kind of resources we had, and that we could make a bigger difference by kind of becoming a more proactive, what I would say, foundation, by trying to decide what were the health issues facing the state and how could we change those health issues in some proactive way. And so that's when we became kind of a more, I would say, strategic foundation. And so that's when we started doing some more bigger initiatives on our own. We created an organization in Topeka called the Kansas Health Institute that does data and research for the state, has its own staff. We created the Kansas Leadership Center based in Wichita. We did a huge initiative about building community foundations in communities across the state. The one in Emporia has been a benefactor of that program, where we challenged them to raise more money. We would match the money that they could raise in their community. If they'd raised so much, we'd match the dollars, which really helped community foundations to grow all over the state of Kansas. We didn't have many community foundations in Kansas. And those foundations fund local projects in communities. And then we've done all kinds of various advocacy programs. Like we were really successful in helping get the clean indoor air ordinance passed in Kansas, the tobacco, so that you couldn't smoke in public places. We were very involved in that, getting that law passed in Kansas. So we do a lot of those kind of more proactive public health kind of things in the state, where we will say, we're going to do this initiative, we'll provide so much money for it. You apply to us to get the money to do it, those kind of things. So those were big learnings over the years. So anyway, I could talk forever about this, Ed, so you probably better cut me off.
No worries, no worries. We'll find a way to come back to some of it. Don't worry. Let me hop into another question from the folks who have submitted questions. Again, you can go to emporia.edu/live and submit your question. Tiffany has a question for you, Steve. What do you feel is your biggest challenge you have faced, and how did you overcome it? Biggest challenge you have faced, and how you have overcome it. What do you think?
Well, I think I've faced a number of different challenges over my life. I was thinking about that because it's not like everything's been rosy all my life. You know, at various points in my life, I've never had any, like, I would say, serious life-threatening kind of challenge, but, you know, just hard things to struggle with as far as like career choices and those kind of things, like, which I'm sure every student faces, every person faces, where you think, should I leave this job, go to another job because I'm really comfortable here, but I'm not really all that happy. And I'm glad that I made the choices I made. You know, for one example, when I was working, I'll just give one example. When I worked at the guy's shop in Emporia, you know, I loved that job when I started it. I truly loved it. I got to go to market. I got the owner of the store, you know, treated me very well, and I was really happy there for a number of years. But at one point, it just got really unchallenging. And I thought, you know, he was going to sell me the store, but I just thought, I cannot see myself doing this the rest of my life. And I just thought, I've lost my passion for this. And so that's when I decided I'm going to apply for law school. And it was a hard decision, but always in the back of my mind, I thought I might want to be a lawyer someday. And I had an uncle who was a lawyer in my hometown. So I applied, I got accepted, and I went. And it wasn't that easy because I didn't have much money to do that. But, and to be honest, I didn't really even enjoy it that much, but I did it. And I completed it. And, you know, I think it really benefited me in the long run. And I practiced law in my hometown, which was, you know, a really small town. Being a single guy wasn't the greatest place to be. But I did that for a couple of years and then decided that I really probably should go to work for Senator Dole, because that is what really made my heart sing. I really loved that job, but it was really hard to leave. Fortunately, my parents all through this time were, whatever you want to do it. You know, you got to do what makes you happy. And it was hard for them because they didn't want me to leave my hometown. But and I was doing really well financially practicing law, but I knew that I needed to do what made me happy, what was my passion in my life, what made my heart sing. And so I left and went back to work for Senator Dole, and that was the right thing. I eventually met my wife through working for Senator Dole, and eventually that led to my work at the Kansas Health Foundation. After at some point, politics, I realized, you can do that for so many years, and at some point you realize you really need to go off and do something else. And I did at one point, and that's led to the Kansas Health Foundation, and it's all worked out. So I guess my point in all that would be, you've got to do in life what is your passion, and you've got to know when it's time to move on if whatever you're doing doesn't make your heart sing anymore. And I've always told my children that, do what makes you happy, because you work too much in your life that if you're not happy, you just can't go to work every day unhappy.
And Steve, though, I like how you talked about some of the tension you felt when you were trying to make those decisions, though, because I think a lot of people, it's just easier to do what you've been doing. Like, you've been running the store, the guy's shop, and it may have been easier just to keep running it, even though it wasn't passionate. Like, there was some risk involved in taking kind of the unknown path versus continuing to run the men's clothing store, or continuing to practice law in St. John's. And I'm just kind of curious if you have any thoughts about that idea that, to follow your passion, you sometimes have to take a little risk, or try something you're not sure how it's going to play out. Any reflections on that?
Definitely. It was hard. It was really hard, especially when I went off to law school, because I was on my own. I'd been making my own living, and to give that up, really hard.
Yeah. Steve, I want to hop to a few more questions here that have come in. Let's see here, from Chloe. What would be your one piece of advice for current ESU students concerning things to do to prepare for a future career? So one piece of advice for things to do to prepare for a future career. What do you think?
One. Oh my gosh, one piece of
advice. Or one of the pieces of advice. Maybe not the only one, but.
I think it is really important to be involved on campus, to get experience, have a job. I learned so much through my involvement while I was there. Blue Key taught me so much about the real world. Working taught me so much about the real world. And also it gave me good references, and that involvement really, really helped. Also, one piece of advice I've given both of my children is always be willing to work harder than the other person. I mean, the people who get noticed and get ahead are the ones who work hard and take initiative. I said, just because you may get paid for 40 hours doesn't mean you put in 40 hours. I mean, the ones who get ahead don't leave at 5 every night. They're the ones who, come up with the new ideas, work harder than the next person. They're the ones that move up to the next level. So that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's good advice. It's good advice. We've got some more questions coming in, so let me hop to some of these, and want to remind folks that questions you can submit via emporia.edu/live, emporia.edu/live, and in just a little while we'll be transitioning to the after party. You'll have a Zoom link for that here in just a little bit, but a few more questions to go before we do that. Let's see here. I like this one. This is from Sammy. it says, Sammy asks, do you have any advice for an employee who knows it's time to go or time to go do something new, but everyone finds them too valuable and won't even let them be promoted internally, so that person is still at the same spot in the workplace? I can picture this scenario. You know, they're doing a great job. They want to do something different, but you know, it might feel like the world is conspiring to keep them right where they are because they're doing such a good job. Well, what advice would you give that person?
So is the question that they want to move up in the organization or they want to leave the organization?
I think it could be either one, a little unclear, but they want, to me, it sounds like they want to go do something to help their heart sing, to use your language. But they're feeling pressure not to, from others, you know. What do you think?
Pressures from others. Well, you can ignore the pressure from others. I mean, that's pretty much what I did. I mean, it wasn't like I broadcast that I wanted to leave at all. I just went off and did, you know, quietly on the side what I needed to do and made plans to get where I wanted to go. But maybe, I mean, I'm not sure whether his question is also, is there a way that I can move up within my organization? Sometimes I think it helps if that is also what he wanted to do, is to, you know, do a comparison of your job to other similar jobs in your community, what they pay, what their expertise are, et cetera, and not in a confrontational way, but in a, you know, maybe when your review is coming up, lay out what you've accomplished, what that job pays and the responsibilities are in another job, and let your boss know that perhaps you're not, you know, it's time for them to consider moving you to a different position.
Yeah. And I love how you started your thoughts or your advice, which is you might need to just ignore these other people. You know, I think that can feel a little harsh sometimes, but I think it's really important advice because, you know, I'm sure there are people who, your parents were great, you said, but I'm sure there are people who wanted you to stay in St. John's.
Yeah.
You know,
I had two
you know, there's the owner of the store. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
I had two sisters who were like, "Are you sure? We don't think you should go."
Yeah.
And I was like,
Wow.
"No, I really think I should go."
Yeah. Or you had an owner of the store that you worked at who wanted to sell you the store. Probably, I could imagine that his preference would have been for you to have not gone to law school.
Yeah. No, he was.
Senator Dole's. Yeah, Senator Dole's preference may have been for you to have stayed on the team. So I think there is something really great in your initial response to that question, which was, you know, you might want to just ignore the other people and focus on what's going to make your heart sing. Speaking of heart singing, let me ask you this next question, and then we're getting close to a final statement, Steve. Not quite yet, but we're getting close. This is from Carla Smith, and Carla says, "You talk about making your heart sing, and I know from talking with you that whenever you talk about working with kids in the Wichita Public Schools, your face lights up. Can you share about the work you and the foundation have done with Wichita kids?"
Oh yeah, we adopted. There's a school called Woodland Elementary that's in a high poverty area of Wichita, and it's Woodland Magnet School, health and wellness magnet. That's why we adopted. Part of the reason we adopted it because it was a health and wellness magnet school. Very diverse school. And so we adopted that school because Wichita has a program where you can adopt different schools, corporations and nonprofits and the like can adopt schools and help the kids by visiting there and reading to the children. We also provided them with, you know, a gift every Christmas, like a sweatshirt or whatever, that we would give all the kids at the school. And it was just a fabulous program. I mean, you know, to go to that school and the kids were so unbelievably appreciative of any attention that they would get. And the gifts that we would give them at Christmas it just made you want to cry. They loved those sweatshirts or jackets or whatever we gave them every summer so much, and come up and hug you. And it was just one of the most life-giving things we could possibly do. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
I love it. I love it. Quick question here from Lauren. Were you involved with 4-H growing up, Steve, by any chance?
No, I was a city kid.
Okay, you got it.
The farm kids called me a city kid because, I lived in town.
Yeah, that's great. She talks about, Lauren talks about how much her 4-H experience shaped her view of leadership.
Yes.
And she was just curious if you were involved. If you were not, since you were involved, can you speak to the 4-H program at all over the years? You've surely learned a lot about it, interacting with folks.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It was a great program. I mean, wonderful. We dealt a lot with 4-H programs over the years at the Kansas Health Foundation. We did tons of partnerships with 4-H. Many people that we dealt with came through the 4-H programs through leadership. And I have great respect for 4-H.
Great. Well, I know we're coming down to the end of this part of the conversation. Now, there is an after party in the Zoom room. After this, those of you who registered should have a link in the email that was sent to you earlier today will take you to that after party. So we hope you'll join us here in just a few minutes. Steve, we would love to give you a chance to offer any kind of closing thoughts before we head off to that Zoom. And you can take this wherever you like. I know how much you care about the state of Kansas and how much you love Kansas. That's something we haven't talked about too much. So I'd maybe love to just hear a little bit of reflections on your thoughts about our state, and anything else on your mind about what it means to receive this recognition from your alma mater, which is really a special experience. So Steve, what closing remarks to you?
Well, thank you, Ed, and I appreciate you doing this tonight for sure. And you've been wonderful at doing it as always. You have a real talent for doing this type of thing, and we are so blessed in Kansas to have you leading the Leadership Center. You've done a tremendous job, such a great resource for the state of Kansas. And I know Emporia State has had a very special partnership with you over the years. Thank you for doing that for my alma mater. I know that has been a great partnership. Appreciate that. As far as the state of Kansas, I dearly love this state and have all my life. I really feel like, I know every corner of Kansas, working for Senator Dole for so many years and traveling with him to every corner of the state so many times. We went everywhere together. And even when I didn't work for him, those 2 summers that I worked as an intern, after my first internship in DC, I worked 2 summers during law school as an intern for him, and we had a mobile office that I drove to every single county in the state and set up office hours. So I feel like I've been on every highway in the state of Kansas. So I really know the state from corner to corner, and really have a lot of pride in the state of Kansas and its people. And then working for the Kansas Health Foundation, same thing. I mean, we just worked in every single county, gave grants to every single county. So I feel like, I really know the state well. Over the years, one thing that you always hear people talk is Kansans have a really independent spirit. And that certainly is true. But on the other hand, I think that one thing Kansans are really great about is that they really do have a lot of willingness to work together and collaborate with each other. And I know you've seen that, Ed, as far as if one community has a program that they think is really doing wonderful things for their community, they are more than welcome, are more than easy to share that information with another community very quickly and love to do it. And so that collaboration is always there and is always going on. There's tons of community pride from community to community. I think the only thing that sometimes gets in the way of us making more progress is just that kind of Kansas nice attitude, that we don't like to be viewed as being argumentative or, too harsh sometimes, so that we kind of don't like to get into difficult conversations that I think sometimes have to take place to make progress happen. As you well know, at the Leadership Center, you talk about that. And sometimes you have to have those kind of discussions to move things forward. So I think sometimes that does get in our way. But overall, I think we have a great state. Lots of good things here. Core values are very strong still here in Kansas. So I think that's really good. As far as this award, once again, I just thank the people at Emporia State for honoring me. I really don't feel like I deserve it, but I appreciate it. And for allowing me to have this time this evening to share whatever knowledge I might be able to pass on. I appreciate and giving me this time. So thank you so much.
Well, Steve, it's well deserved. And I want to remind people that let's keep the conversation going. If you have other questions you'd like to ask Steve, or just be a part of the conversation afterwards, go and click on that link you received in the email earlier today, and we'll see you in the Zoom room in just a couple minutes. Take care, everybody. Congratulations again, Steve. Take care.
Mm-hmm.